All right. I'm Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast by a city manager for city managers and other public sector executives. I'm really excited about today's show because we're going to talk about the 36-hour work week in Pennsylvania with Jamie Gwynn. And when I post about the alternative work schedules, hybrid schedules, the 410s, the 980s, so forth and so on, I get a lot of traction, a lot of interest on my post on LinkedIn. But Jamie here is doing a 36-hour work week. Somehow he got his governing body to sign off on giving away 4 free hours of work to his workers. And we're going to learn more about how he did that, how he convinced them, and how it's going. Hey, Jamie, welcome to the show. Why don't you give us a little introduction of who you are, what you're about, and we'll jump into it.
Thanks, Joe. What an honor to be here. I appreciate the time, all the way from Pennsylvania. So, my name is Jamie Gwynn. I've been the manager for New Hanover Township. It's in Upper Montgomery County, about an hour outside of Philadelphia. I'm in my 7th year. Before that, I was the assistant to the manager, the Dwight Schrute, if you will, in Northampton Township. in Northampton Township in Lower Bucks for a few years. New Hanover Township is about 13,000 people, but it's also one of the fastest growing municipalities in the state of Pennsylvania in the last census. And Northampton Township was, I think it's about 40,000 people now. It's top 25 in PA. There's 2,600 municipalities. How I got to Northampton, I graduated with my master's in public administration from the University of Pennsylvania. Before that, I did Teach for America, taught 4th grade English in Baltimore. Before that, I got my degree in communication studies from Wilkes University in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, where I am from, and sprinkled in between. I've done internships with the city of Wilkes-Barre, the city of Scranton, Luzerne County when they transitioned from a 3-commissioner system to a county council. So 10 years of experience and have seen a lot of different governments. I consider myself a government nerd, love it. It's in my veins, always want to do this. So being on your podcast to be able to share something that I believe would transform in a very simple way the lives of people, but also incent more people to go into local government is a big goal of mine because I think the more talent we have in local government, the better. And local government represents the majority of what everybody listening to your podcast is dealing with. So again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And being can I tell you something? Pennsylvania's always been an enigma to me.
Why is that?
What is the deal? You guys got like counties, townships, cities, boroughs.
Boroughs?
You might have some towns and villages in there somewhere. You got like, you know, 3 different types of counties, X different types of school districts. I mean, is this like
You
a
got
is this like
first class townships, second
yeah,
class townships, first class cities.
what's going on in Pennsylvania, man? Why you guys got to make it so complicated, the
I don't
clicker
know. I
state?
think I think back when the American Revolution was going down, there was a lot of opinionated people that their ancestors had become managers at this point.
It is incredible, man. Anyway, I've never had the privilege of visiting your state. I've heard it's very beautiful, but I've always been amused by the complexity of your local government structures, at least from my perspective.
I always like what do they have in Massachusetts? Like Minutemen
Yeah,
or there's just
selectmen. There's a
select people. Yeah, I'm like that's cool. I want to bring that to Pennsylvania.
Oh, the Northeast is a different animal, man. Northeast
Yeah.
is a different animal. But hey, you're 36 years old. You already have 7 years of experience as a township manager. You're crushing it. You're a smart dude. And we're going to talk about this alternative work schedule that you've introduced because based off our pre-interview discussion, it's my understanding that you're the first community in the entire state of Pennsylvania in the public sector that has gone to a 36-hour work week. Is that correct?
Yeah, as far as I know, and I'd probably take a stab at, we're probably either first or one of the few in probably the country that has implemented it. I mean, there's obviously a lot of news articles out there about people doing it in the private sector, but I can't find anywhere through anybody where people are doing a reduced schedule that's not like a 9-day conversion or what have you, like
Right,
anything less than 40 hours.
right.
So we are now we've convinced another municipality to do it. So there's 2 and we got momentum. And I've been doing presentations at the state with this and stuff, but like it's coming, Joe. It's
Yeah.
coming one way or another.
Well, what I love about this conversation that we're going to have is, I've talked about what I'm doing as far as the podcast and on LinkedIn about creating a community for ambitious, public sector managers, people who have innovative ideas, who are doing creative things, who are really bringing something new to the profession. Because obviously, the public sector has been historically identified as being staid, stale, slow, so forth and so on. And so you're a young man, 36 years old, and you've brought this really innovative concept to your community. And I really want to dig into how the hell this even came about. Like, I mean, because so for full disclosure, although I think some people probably already know, I'm center right on the political spectrum, right? And you're about an hour outside of Philadelphia, you said. So I'm assuming you are in an area that leans red because you're not, not in the
Yeah.
metro area. I don't know, man. My peeps can be a little a little rough on the whole let's get 4 hours away for free here type deal. So to walk me through this, I
Yeah,
mean,
that's like what I think. Like one of the first questions I'll get from people is like, you must have like a 5-0 Democrat board, and I'm like 5-0 Republican, and like people just they look at me and they don't know what to do, and I'm like,
right,
look, it's almost like we overthink at times, and so I have this motto as a manager that if you keep things simple, it usually works itself out. I think in local government specifically, we over communicate, do too many meetings, have too many cooks in the kitchen, and what happens, Joe? Nothing ever gets
right,
done.
right.
So like,
Glacier speed, right? Yeah,
so it's there. Look, there's a time and place for that. There's a methodical approach, but I think at least in New Hanover, there's an opportunity to do some cool things. But again, look, and you get every time you present a new idea, you're putting your entire reputation on the line. I went all out on this concept, and I was in it to win it, and I wasn't afraid to lose my job over something I truly believed in. It's hard to do. So for me, this concept was rooted so in New Hanover with the 13,000 people. When I left Northampton, I was 29 years old. I was married. Actually, I did my interview and then went on my honeymoon. So so I think my first year of marriage went to the community.
right, right.
I've been paying for it ever since, Joe. Uh, so we have these 13,000 people. I came here at 29 years old. I knew that it was one of the fastest growing communities. And when I was in Northampton, they were already built out. So I thought it'd be fascinating to come and kind of get involved and see that. And, you know, uh, there's a lot of issues with stormwater management, at least in Pennsylvania, at least where we're at, and just a lot of different things that challenge my brain in different ways and make me a better jack of all trades,
Absolutely.
manager. So I come here and I want to sidebar for a second. So like to put in perspective, New Hanover Township in 2016, I come in for my interview, and I kid you not, I go into the vestibule. The door, the second door is propped open. There's a leak from the roof coming down, slow dripping the floor. And I go and I go, excuse me. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, you got a bucket? Can I help you guys out? And like that was like the sign. I'm like, my gosh, like we got to fix a lot here. Like if you can't even put a bucket, you got a roof leak, the toilet's not working.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so anyway, so I take this job. We have about 30 employees. We have a 12-person police department. We have 4 people now, but we had 6 people in we have an authority. We have an interesting relationship, but like we manage all the authority, all the employees. So we do all the
What's
sewer.
forgive me?
The
What's an
sewer.
authority? Oh, sewer authority. Okay,
So
got you.
yeah,
Okay.
sewer authority. So that's another thing is they didn't name it correctly, but it's a sewer authority. So we got that. We have public works. We have, let's say, 8 public works employees, and then we have admin staff. So 2 different entities under one roof, if you will. Managing that, managing community, doing all this development. Our development is, last time I checked, over 2,000 proposed units. There might be 15 active projects. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I come into New Hanover, and essentially the board, and I'll tell you this, I wasn't even their first choice, Joe. Uh, I wasn't.
I appreciate the candor. I
No,
appreciate the
I
candor.
wasn't. And look, and I'm not bothered by that because it's kind of like they didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And look, I can't blame them because the amount of stuff that they were
Well,
dealing
you're a
with.
rookie. You're a rookie too, right? I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
I mean, like,
yeah.
and think about it, I wasn't an assistant manager.
No, you
I
were
was
Dwight.
I was Dwight. I was Dwight, and like So think about the quality of candidates. If I'm number two and I have an assistant to the managers, that just tells you like what people want. No one wanted to come up here. And so what happened was is the guy who took the job, he leveraged it for a better job. Now that's an ICMA violation, Joe. You know,
uh,
once you accept that, I know how much you adore ICMA.
that's right.
Uh,
That's right. I got the code of ethics on my wall.
I thought I saw a tattoo under your sleeve at the but so this guy, he gets the conditional offer, he leverages it, he gets a better deal. And then the board's like, "Hey, do you still want to work here?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, you don't know me." And we're like, "Look, we've never looked back." And so it's one of those things that, just makes you kind of like, I adore this community for that reason, because the people who put me into this position, the majority are still here. But
Right.
like, and look, whether I was on record or not, like I probably the five nicest human beings you can have as a board. How rare it is to actually have people that just want to do the right thing, because you know how political boards can get.
Yeah, it
And
can get
that's
nasty.
that's probably, I mean, I even moved my family here in the pandemic. And I always had a rule. I said I will never live in the community that I serve, but I don't know, I adore this place because of the people here. So
You trying to get
it
me fired up right now, Jamie, on the
try to
residency?
find it. Yeah, look, no, look, I don't believe in residence requirements, by the way. So I, like, on my own chose that.
Well, that's a testament to obviously your relationship with your body, and it's kind of funny you say that because I will always fondly look favorably and romantically and nostalgically on my first gig, and I was so
Yeah.
grateful for the opportunity. And you're still in your first gig, obviously 7 years in, it's going great. So that's awesome. That's an amazing story, man. I just it's just funny to hear you talk about that way though, about being the second one, because I did post it on LinkedIn several months ago about how I'm not trying to be anybody's second place finish or sloppy seconds, as I might have used that terminology or something like that. But when you are a rookie and you're trying to get your first gig, man, it's
Hmm.
not always the ideal circumstance. It doesn't always Everything doesn't line up like it's just perfect, like textbook. Sometimes you got to take a risk, you got to take a gamble on both sides, right? The governing body and the candidate themselves. So
Well, yeah, and I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got as I was searching for that gig was, a recruiter was like, "Look, you have everything that a municipality needs to be successful, but what you lack is life experience."
right,
And I go, "Well, how do I get that?" He
you
goes,
live.
"Keep living life." That's not helpful. So I mean, look, I did job interviews where, like, people look at me like, very impressive for a young man, and I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, how do you respond to that, right? It's like,
yeah, I didn't get the call back. I'm like, what
yeah,
is this?
yeah.
So look, so
So
it's like, don't get discouraged over it.
so you have this idea of going to a 36-hour work week, right?
Oh, yes.
Does this spring
Yeah.
from the pandemic? Is this something you were thinking about before the pandemic, or did the pandemic illuminate this idea? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah. So when I got to New Hanover, and understand, like, when I was at Northampton, we were talent would come to Northampton because, like, the average employee was there for 15 years, Joe. So if an
Okay,
opportunity
very
opened up,
stable.
like, yeah, very stable opportunity opened up, people are going to go. New Hanover at that point was very unstable, and it's also at the northern peak of the county. So in order to get talent, like, I mean, if you're pulling talent in the Philadelphia region where schools are and stuff like that, how do I get people to want to drive here and work here? And again, like, it's not like we're winning over the world with our salaries either.
Right, right, right.
So it's kind of like I've been chewing on what are different ways I could attract talent. The the game theory position is outspend the municipality next to you or what have you. But what happens is you then get into a board that, do they want to raise taxes? Probably not. Or,
Right.
there's different variables that go against you. But then I started kind of thinking, like, if there's things I can do that maybe don't cost money, what can I do? So I did what probably most people do. I started thinking about 410s. Started
Yep.
doing some research on it. Like, the data was just like, like, the health benefits weren't there. And I'm like,
Can
I
can
don't
you
know
elaborate?
it.
Can you elaborate on that? Because you're poo pooing the 410s,
Yeah,
and I thought about the
yeah.
410s, and I would love a 410 versus a traditional schedule, right? So Actually, before we get into the 410 dissection, can
Yeah.
you, for the audience that's listening, what is your work schedule now for your employees? How does it work?
So okay, so we have our 30 employees, I telling you. This does not apply to our police. They're union members under Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
we have our contract with them. This is 18 employees, public works, sewer, admin. I don't have any other unions except for police. So our hours for sewer and public works is 6:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Our hours for our admin staff, which involves codes, finance, and just general support, is 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
So that 10 hour, when we talk about, there's data out there that talks about the 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. time period is like the family zone.
Right.
And that's like the 2 hour window that families come together, connect, and like all these other benefits happen. So like part of me was like, if I'm gonna do a 10 hour, I have to stay away from anything after 5. So then I'm just backwards planning. I'm like, do people want to work from 7 a.m. to 5? And then then you start looking at like people have kids, what's their schedule with dropping people off at, the kids at the
Right.
bus,
Right.
getting up in the morning, what time do they get up in the morning, get their kids ready? Like just from that perspective of passing my own sniff test, I'm like, God, it's like so difficult. Now, like if you got into the 10-hour day, like I'd agree with you. 10 hours as managers, we probably work that anyway, right?
Right.
But it's like when you're getting into public works employees and it's a more physical position, or sewer employees, I started asking my employees and it's like, nah, we would prefer working that Friday instead of 10 hours because it's just, I can't explain it. It just feels too long. And I'm not going to be able to resonate with those employees because I work odd hours all the time anyway in my craft.
Right.
Like that was like a no-go. Like no one wanted the 410s. And then when I started looking at the data, I'm like, okay, there's something here. How do I do it? So I'm sitting at the beach in July of 2021. And look, this is very ironic because I'm at the beach and I'm starting to chew and I'm like, what if I just take off 1 hour instead of doing 410s, we could do 4 9s. And I'm just like,
You might be too young for this reference, but did you ever see something about Mary with the
oh, definitely,
so like
definitely.
7 minute abs and
Have you seen my baseball? Yeah.
let's take off no, let's take off an hour here. So okay.
Right. So I'm like, I'm like, what if we take off an hour? I'm having a cocktail on the beach. I'm looking at the beach. And I'm like, that might be palatable, but I don't know how things are going to work out. I kid you not. I get a text message from my finance director. And she goes, did you see this study from Iceland? And I like open it up and I kid you not, it's like four day, 36-hour work week. And I was like, no shit. So I just start like deep diving to like their stuff. And that's where I'm pulling a lot of data from on the 5 to 7 stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so this is working somewhere. Maybe not America, but it's working somewhere. So, I wouldn't be the craziest person. I might be the craziest person here, but not there. So that was kind of the momentum and like the inception for me of thinking, is this even possible? That's where I was at that point in time.
Okay, so here's the deal. Let's stick with your admin staff, right? They're working from 8 to
Yeah.
5, 8 to 5,
Hmm.
and then working Monday through Thursday, 4 days a week, right?
Yep.
And that's
Hmm.
9 hours. Okay.
Yep.
So are they also getting paid for like a half hour lunchtime how does that work? Or
Oh
my
yeah.
math off?
I have big thoughts on this too. Like, and look, and it's no disrespect. It's all love among, all of us managers. But when I
Right?
see municipalities, when they go, you can have an unpaid half an hour of lunch, and I'm like, why? Like, what does that do? That might be a traditional like mindset, but I'm like, when you are like, we're in a talent gap, right?
We are.
That's one of the easiest things to say. We're gonna pay you for lunch. Like, who out there? And here's my first challenge here. Who out there truly thinks a person is actually working for 8 hours a day, right?
But
Like, you
that's
might,
yes, that's the classic thing, right? As we all know that people really because we see studies all the time that say people really work 3 or 4 hours or whatever, right? And
yeah,
I forget the what's the theory or the and what's the I forget what's called the rule or the law where you stretch the amount of work you have to fit the number of hours you have
yeah,
available. I forget what it's called, but I think there's a lot of city managers, and I wanted to double check about the lunch because I think they're listening and they're like, wait a minute, am I understand that correctly? So not only are they working 36 hours a week over
they also
four
get their,
days,
yep.
they're getting their lunch paid too. Uh,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
that is not. This is very unique. This is a very unique situation. Like I'm pretty sure it's pretty unique, Jamie. Like I mean,
Joe, it's I have like my managerial philosophy is keep it super simple. Like there's a different variation on that acronym, but I'm
yeah,
like
yeah,
just keep it super simple. Like if you have something that's simple, most people are going to understand a simplistic approach to a topic. So if I go, hey, it's 4 days, 36 hours. I don't care about like your lunch. Here's what I want in return. I want our residents to be happy with the service we are providing, right? How
okay,
we get there, are we an end goal species or are we a process oriented species? For me,
end goal,
I
right?
got the end goal. I care about end goal. My board, whether I work a minute or 100 hours, they care about results. Now, I can't do it in a minute. I'm never going to try in 100 hours, but like
Right.
at the end of the day, I get judged on results. I don't get based on the amount of hours I put into a failure.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. So here's the thing though. I'm listening to you and I'm like, I mean, my head's still kind of blown by the idea of the schedule, right? I mean, it's like, I mean, this is not a traditional path to go, right? And this sure as hell is not a classic limited government, small government Republican
You're
idea
right.
or
You're
whatever,
right.
right? So how the hell does Jamie Gwynn take this? What beach were you on, by the way? I need to go. Maybe I need to go visit this
Uh,
beach. I don't.
Ocean City, Jersey.
Okay, all right. Maybe Ocean City, Jersey is where we all need to go and and park our
Be
butts in
enlightened.
the sand. Yeah, yeah. Because your your butt's on the beach and you come up with this idea. How the hell do you bring this back to your city or your township and get buy-in from your commission, your governing body? Walk me through that.
This gig, in order to be successful, is part skill, part luck, and part timing. And so if I would have, there's no way I would have brought this concept up in my first year, right?
Right,
I'd be laughed out. It was the timing. I don't know if maybe the pandemic helped soften the hearts and minds of people on this because I maybe if the pandemic didn't happen, I would have never brought it up. But I think when we started having this brain drain of talent of people leading or not wanting to work or whatever you call it. Look, we've had a lot of employees turn over because the expectation is that we are going to be the gold standard community. Now, I believe every community can be a gold standard, but like here, the message was clear. There are no excuses. We are going to perform, and we'll perform with the talent we have. But like, we need talent at the same time when we have retirements and that. I have to think of something. So here's what I did. So I come off the beach. I got to tell you, it was a lot of work. It was a lot of conversation. So I talked to a few board members offline first and start to get their input on like, would this be something you'd consider and stuff like that. And I was surprised. Like there was some like, hey, we can see that because my angle was if you want your residents to be taken care of,
right.
then
Which is job number one for the governing body, right?
it
I
is
mean,
like, is there a job? Is there a different job number one? It
right,
is like we are public servants. So if our job is to make sure our roads are taken care of, our public safety is taken care of, our residents are communicated with in a timely fashion, human beings have to do that. Now, I love Micah and Chat GPT, but they're not gonna be able to do that.
right,
So you need the human aspect. I can't do every role here. I need people that are qualified in order to do those roles. And not everyone's going to have a great day. Like, I don't know what is going through a resident's mind, but like at times they're going to come in hot and heavy.
that's right.
How do I get somebody to take that conversation, calm down the situation, turn it into a win, et cetera, et cetera? So, like, I'm explaining to the board, I'm like, I need a person to want to work here that's qualified enough to achieve the goal, which is making sure our residents are taken care of. And the board, their goal is making sure the residents are taken care of.
Right.
I started talking to the board. I'm like, if you don't worry about the process, I can promise you the result. I'll put my career on the line for on that. And I think a lot of municipalities they get too caught up in that process. So first step was like getting the board to just kind of think outside the box on an individual basis. So
And
that's what we did.
in all fairness to them, I mean that's in order to be a creative and innovative manager, you need to have a board that's also willing to
Yeah.
accept that risk too, right? And we'll kind of maybe come back to that a little bit more because you said something earlier in this interview that I really would like to expand on, and that is the risk that comes with taking on something that's innovative and new,
Mhm.
right? But maybe we can come back to that if time
Yeah.
permits. But I wanted to recognize your governing body because obviously it begins and ends with them being receptive to the innovative ideas that a manager wants to bring. So
Yeah, and like, and look, I'll give you the makeup. So, like, one supervisor used to be an employee here. Another supervisor is a painter. Another supervisor is a geologist. Another one is in construction management, and the other one at that time was a retired police officer. So, I mean, and they're all, I mean, one female, four males, all over the age of 50, all Republican.
not
And
I mean not fairly diverse in some respects, but not what you would consider a ideal composition of a governing body to implement this type of schedule, I would think. So
but I'll tell you though, all five are also open-minded. I have these conversations. I go, okay, I have a good feeling there might be at least three people that would want to talk about it. Because the last thing I want to do is like, there is in no way I am bringing this topic up in public
absolutely, you'd be
and embarrassing myself or the board, right?
yes,
Our job is to protect the board as well.
yeah, you got to do some groundwork. Yeah, for sure.
So we have like an information gathering session where I'm like, look, let me just explain what I what I would like to do. And like tongue in cheek to Republicans or Democrats, regardless, like I go in and you have to know your audience. And these five Republicans, they already know what I'm going to talk about.
Right, right. It's not a
And
mystery. Yeah.
no, and I'm in front of them. They're on this dais. And I'm just talking to them. And I'm like, reading their faces. And they're all like, just, I can't read their faces. And I go, hey, I know this sounds an idea that would be pushed by a Democrat, but I promise you, it's it's not a Democrat idea. It's probably the smartest idea you ever do. And I
That's one
think
way to
like
start the sales pitch.
I think three people laughed, and I said, "We're off to a good start." Uh, and you do what A manager does. You focus on the three that laughed, right?
That's right. That's
And
right.
so, look, I have a really, really strong board in terms of even if they say no, they will. It's very respectful, very civil, which is rare in itself these days. And we'll challenge each other. And like at the end of the day, it's like my job is to implement. So if they don't want to do it, they won't do it. I bring it up to them, and we're talking about this. And my pitch is like, look, I only can think of two ways to attract talent right now. One
Pay
is to
more, right? Pay
pay
more.
more pay.
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and like look, and I have data from Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and I have data from Bucks County, and I'm gonna tell you it's we we're we're not even close to the average
Let
of
alone
these people. Like
yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, we
like
can't compete.
it's not you're probably not gonna like the solution if you say pay them more
Right.
because we're gonna have to raise taxes. And like look, this is a community that hasn't raised taxes in 18 years. We've reduced taxes in my time here 5%. We take pride in the fact of our fiscal responsibility.
Right.
So I'm like, look, we either pay more or we have to be more innovative. And they're like, go ahead. And I go, I would like to talk about like a 4-day, 36-hour work week. And so we start down that path. And, I get one supervisor who's like, I think it's a really good idea. And then I get another supervisor, he's like, well, like, I don't like the idea because, we should be here 5 days a week, right? You're going to get all that continuous people. We should be here
Yep.
5 days a week. That's how government is. And you had a LinkedIn post recently about, and I might butcher it, so help me out if I'm paraphrasing poorly. But like, essentially, there's like that it factor for a manager on when you say something in front of your board. And I think you're caveating it like in terms of when you're at a board meeting, when do you step in, when do you kind of like correct someone?
Yeah, yeah. There was a discussion about what you don't learn and what you can't learn in MPA school, right? And as how do you interact and massage your relationship with your board members when you're a city manager? It's a very
You're
delicate
right.
process.
And I've taken the time to really build my relationships with people. And look, and if I'm not the manager here, I'll tell you, three of these supervisors would be my friends for life. Like they're just good human beings.
Right.
And so I get one supervisor's talking about, well, what about 40 hours? This is how government always has. And I'm like, well, to be fair, I mean, the work schedule X number of years ago was 6 days, 60 hours. I go, so at some point in time, we went from a 6 day, 60-hour work week to a 5 day, 40-hour work week. So it was kind of like taking us back in time to go like, how did we get here? And
Right.
I'm like, you're right. We can stay at 5 days, 40 hours, and we can keep humming along. Again, if your goal is to keep residents happy, it's almost like a football team. If you want the Eagles to win a Super Bowl, you're not going to win it with all rookies. I mean, I guess you could, it's just the statistics are against you. Like, you need talent.
Right.
And so, like, it's just a concept. So I have another supervisor who's like, well, I'm always going to be opposed to it. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, but what if a tree falls down on a Friday? And I'm like, oh, what if a tree falls down on a Saturday?
Saturday. Exactly. That's the yeah. It's
Like, we're going to go get it.
yeah.
And then he's like, well, what if it snows on a Friday? I'm like, then we're going to come in and we're going to plow the snow just like we would on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And then so like there was a lot of that. And then I think one of the really cool things about that moment is like I had no idea. I mean, I had like two board members are like, hey, like it's worth at least a try. And then I had two board members are like, nah, and I had one kind of on the fence. And then like one of the three board members I couldn't read's like, what do the employees think about it? And I was like, that's like a great question. I didn't even ask my employees.
Well, well, is it the assumption that they'd be a no? The assumption would be that to be a no-brainer, right? I mean, that would be the assumption. But
I'll tell you this. That's the assumption. That's not the rule, man. I'm telling you. Like it's like I told you. I don't know if you're recording this part, but like I had a conversation today with the guy. He's like, I wouldn't like that, and I'm like, you wouldn't like to have every Friday off and work 4 hours? Nah, I don't like that. I'm like this. I don't know, man. We'll leave that for another day, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, so I'm like, okay. So the fact that this one supervisor was saying, who was on the fence, was like, what do the employees think? I was like, let's, you take the win, right?
yeah.
You gotta, as a manager, you gotta know when you're
That's
when you're
a
a step ahead.
that's a buying question. That's a buying question. That's not no question, right? That's a
You're right.
buying question.
I'm
So
gonna get that answer. So
yeah,
like that. So I go, okay. Is everybody okay meeting again in a month? And I can get you the update. Yes. I go, all right. We have ourselves
the fact that
some
you have
momentum.
the fact that you have a second meeting was like that's a victory right then and there for something this innovative and creative. That's no doubt.
hmm
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this, the employee part was probably harder than the initial board part. I I go I'm on like a sales tour and I go, who would like to work 4 hours less and not lose any money? And like, you get people, they're like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
And then you know what? There's always gonna be those people. And I had a person in a department, he goes, nah, I've seen that before. It doesn't work. And I'm like,
You see this before,
uh
huh? I'm pretty sure you
I
haven't seen
go,
this.
like, how'd you see it before? He goes, I'm not interested in working 4 10s. And I go, well, no, this is 4 9s. And he's like, yeah, it still won't work. And I go, all right, we'll put him into the no category. And so, but then you know what? Then you get other people and and then they bully each other, right? Like, why would you do that? And then you
Yeah.
kind of let that marinate. Then look, and then the good questions, then even better questions started. Well, what would happen with our paid time off? And what would happen with our holidays?
Yes. Because here's the thing, Jamie. Like, I'll come back to something real quick. So I floated the idea with my previous city council the city I just left about the idea of shifting to like a 410 or a 980. Not
Yeah.
not not as innovative as what you're doing, obviously, but alternative schedule nonetheless. And my council was totally on board with it. And I'm in
Right.
Kansas, a red state, fairly conservative area, right? There was hardly any pushback at all, and I got pushback from staff that didn't want to do it. That was the crazy
Crazy,
part.
isn't it?
Yeah, it tripped me. It tripped me out. I'm like, wow, this is really strange. But so I'm not the only one that's experienced something
Well, no,
kind of odd like that.
and so that was some naivete on my part, is because I'm always trying to get better at my craft, or like find value where I can find it, that I forgot that there's a real thing out there, that people do not like change.
Yes, it's
And
shocking.
like and
I
you
mean,
know
it's not shock.
it,
We all know this, right? But you're like, but even good change is like on the
no, yeah,
face. It's like,
it's like the devil is always greater than the unknown devil, right? Like, and I gotta admit, like, that's one thing I didn't really think about, and I had to navigate. So, and that took time. So that took time. Like I had a department head. He's like, I absolutely do not want my one staff member to be on that schedule. And I'm like, why? And I'm like, it's just one of those. And then it became like there's different issues. And I had another staff member, because like, and I want to get into PTO for a second. Another staff member asking questions like this, because as we were pre-meeting about this online, it's like there's other things that I had to do in order to make this work. The PTO side of it, paid time off.
Yes.
What we had before the board adopted a trial period, which I'll cover, is we had employees here, and it's probably the norm, right? Like the longer you stay in your municipality, the more time off you
Yes.
get or something. So
Yeah.
like,
Longevity bonus type
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
so like for New Hanover, when you start it, you'd get, let's say, 5 vacation days, and then over time you get 10 vacation days, and then 15 vacation days. You'd always get 10 sick days a year, and then there's all requirements on that, and then you get 3 personal days. We were looking at, so it's 3, 10, anywhere from 23 to 33 days off a year. So I have people that have been here longer that are getting 33 8-hour days
Right.
off a year, full choice. Take it whenever you want. Or 23 days off, full choice. Take it whenever you want. What I was recommending was converting the vacation, sick, and personal to just a pay time off bucket. And as a sidebar, it's sick time's an incredible policy that we can have a whole podcast topic on.
Yep. Yep.
But like, I've been in a number of municipalities where I feel like people just bank it and try and get a payout at the end of their career.
Yeah.
But what was interesting in New Hanover, they have a really strong sick leave policy where, like, see if you could stay with me on this one. It would be like you would need to accumulate like 100 days of sick time, and then you can get paid out for every day after 100 at half
Yeah.
at the then rate you earned it. And I'm like,
Sounds
what?
like a paperwork nightmare. That's what it
So
sounds
I'm
like.
like, I'm telling employees, I'm like you're here, with a cold because you want to like earn $10 10 years from now.
Right.
Take the day off and use sick time. And then or people are like, are you okay if I take off? I'm not feeling well. I'm like, I'm not your police. Like if you want a mental health day, like that's another thing I see municipalities do. They're like, they're monitoring like, well, Josie's not sick today. I'm like, look, if Josie wants to use her sick day, at some point she's going to run out. And then she's unpaid. I don't know, like it's like keep
Right.
it simple. So
Right.
I wanted to convert it to PTO. And what I also did was anybody who had accumulated sick time, I kept that. I'm like, you're not going to lose it. You can use that. But like new employees, you're only getting the PTO
Right.
because we have a really good short-term, disability policy, and some people have short-term, long-term, and what have you. So the PTO I was pitching was, at that point, it was 10 9-hour days. It got approved with 15 9-hour days.
Okay.
So that meant everybody, those getting 23 days, a year, and those getting 33 days, in theory, we're getting a reduction to 15 9-hour days.
Right. But they were getting the
But
4 hours per week.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when you add in that 4 hours per week, and look, first off, I love how quick you picked up on that, because I'm telling you, people implement this, people don't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Those 4 hours, when you multiply them by 42, everybody was getting
Way ahead.
43 days off a year.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer trade. If I could make that trade every day, I mean, I wish I could make fantasy baseball trades like that. Let's put it that way.
Well, so I want to come back to like the employee. He's like, well, how's this PTO going to work? Because, and I'm using pseudonyms here. He's like, well, Johnny just started working here, and I have a problem that guy has the same number of days I have off. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, I've been here longer. And I'm like, yeah, but you earn more. And he's like, yeah, but I just don't like, I feel like that's a disrespect. I'm like, so if we keep the 8-hour, 40-day week model, you're going to have 33 days off. If we implement it, you're going to have 10 more days off, and you're still upset about Johnny? And he's like, yeah, I didn't really think about it like that.
Yeah, it's crazy, huh? Yeah.
And I'm like, but like that, look, that's a real issue. like that ego of staffing. And again, like I want to have a staff that it's not, hey, I have more than you or
Right.
this and that, because that creates culture issues, right? I'm
Right.
trying to create a culture where like we focus on what?
The results,
Helping
right? The people.
residents.
Yeah.
Residents. So we're not talking about like I wonder how much time is wasted in municipalities talking about like, hey, Johnny took an extra 2 minutes on his lunch break. Hey, Josie took off a day when, I saw her, she wasn't really sick, right? It takes away from the goal.
It
And
does.
like, does it really look, if you have an employee that is that way, then get rid of them. Like
Yeah.
why would you like you're already going to spend the time and effort, you might as well just spend the time and effort.
Yeah, yeah. There's a huge. That's a interesting. That's a topic in and of itself, right? This idea of
Yeah.
employees comparing themselves to each other, and losing sight of what the real picture is, the big picture is like, man, it's crazy to think that an individual would be more focused on what somebody else is getting and completely ignore the fact that they're getting more out of the current arrangement and they're benefiting more. Who cares what's happening to this
It's
other person,
fascinating.
right? Yeah, it's like the same thing can be said to this individuals. Well, like, the people who've been working here for a number of years, they were getting, they didn't have this 36-hour work week. So should we not do it now because they never got to benefit it from it until, till now? It's like, how many people retired within the last several years who never got a 36-hour work week? Should we just go back in time? And
Well,
yeah, it's just crazy to think how just the mindset. It's just the mental structure and framework of how we operate. It's just interesting as human beings.
and I want to pivot because we didn't take people's pay away. And I know there are people who are like, well, they're working less. And it's always one of those, there is nobody that's going to be able to explain to me that every employee works an actual schedule they're working.
Right.
Because mentally, we have things going on. Something happened to our kid. We got to worry about the doctor's note. We have that lump in our chest. Or there's always going to be something for somebody in your organization that's on their mind that we're not robots.
Yes.
We're humans.
Yep.
So it's, how do I keep it simple and do that? So we had the 15 days, and then we also have 12. We had 12 and a half 8-hour holidays. We just took it down to 12 holidays at 9 hours. And so what we do is we're Monday through Thursday. So most holidays are Monday or Friday. If a holiday lands on a Friday, I just take the 9 hours and I put it into their PTO bank, and they can use it whenever they want. So Joe, once I got like buy-in from the departments, and it was universal, except for this one director who's like my one employee absolutely cannot do it. Well, I went to that employee. I'm like, hey, do you want to do this? She goes, yeah, and I go, now it's universal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, so I take it back to the board, and I'm feeling good, right? I'm feeling good. I'm like, staff's on board.
Yeah.
I got momentum with the board. And I walk in, I'm like, all right. And like the first supervisor's like, that's a no for me, dog. And I'm like,
what
what?
what happened?
I didn't even say anything. But the other, but you know what though? But he's so cool. He smiles. He's like this. He goes, but again, like, we could be civil about it. And I'm like, okay. He goes, I just believe in traditional. And I'm like, all right, fair enough. You're the boss, right? You're the boss.
Right.
That
Right.
is what it is. So board starts asking me a little more detailed questions. They're like, Jamie, what are the benefits that you see? And I'm like, look, if the talent is 30 minutes away from us, which, if you look at where New Hanover is in proximity to where the town is, probably 30 minutes to an hour. I said, I'm not sure if people, I go, I know people probably don't want to travel 30 minutes to an hour to work in New Hanover Township. But if we don't work Fridays, people might think differently. They may go, well, I might save gas on that Friday. And it doesn't feel as bad. I go, it's just a hypothesis. I go, but I'll tell you, if I get talent, and as soon as that person comes in this door, they're used to a 5-day, 40-hour work week. And now they're going to get conditioned upon a 4-day, 36-hour work week. Do you know how much power is in that when some other municipality is going to say, hey, we're going to pay you more to come? There's going to be a pause with that thought process. Because
Yes.
now that person's going to go, what's the value of that Friday to me?
Pretty damn valuable, I would think, for a lot of people. I would think.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, The 36-hour work week's 90% of 40. So financially, it would make sense to mean 10% more. I mean, a manager, one of the best managers I've ever met, always said, you never leave unless you get 15% more. But I mean, what is the value of that Friday to you? Like, do you have kids?
Yeah.
Do you do things on Fridays as a family? You know, if you want to go to an amusement park, go on a Friday morning when everybody's at school. Way easier experience.
Right.
Like, there's just an element of that, like that I was telling the board. I'm like, it can't hurt to try. Like,
So
what do we have to lose?
So let me ask you this, Jamie. So there's a lot of city managers who are listening to this, right? And they might say, okay, so i- is this primarily pitched to them, to your governing body, as a way of recruiting talent because you had an issue with recruiting talent, or does it go beyond that? Because there's a lot of cities that are struggling for talent, right? But there's some cities out there who might be like, well, we're all struggling for talent. One and two, maybe we're not struggling for talent. Maybe that's maybe that's not a good sales pitch. Was there anything else that you used to sort of pitch the idea, or what was or was that just the overriding factor of securing talent?
Securing talent, one, because when we had a lot of employee turnover, it takes so much time of my time and cost to either get rid of that employee or to bring someone on. And then, like, when I'm doing application process, the quality of applicants is not at the level that I would expect if I was a little bit closer to Philadelphia.
Right.
And especially with like the salaries that we're paying aren't as competitive when you get closer to Philadelphia. Even though like the work, we have like the most development of any municipality, so we are infinitely more sophisticated in certain areas than bigger municipalities.
And I don't know,
But
maybe you agree or not, because you're in a smaller municipality, and I've my career's been spent in small municipalities, and I believe that turnover is far more damaging and impactful in the smaller municipalities because oftentimes you don't have the ability, you don't have multiple people who can do the same role or function often because there's just not enough manpower to go around, right? So when you lose
yeah,
somebody and you have that knowledge gap, or you lose that institutional history or memory or knowledge, it's a struggle. Do you think that turnover hurts the smaller organizations more, and this might actually be more conducive or better, this might be more better received in smaller communities as opposed to larger communities?
yes to your first question. I think it would work in both communities, but the first part of that is like in my role, we all equate ourselves to township manager, but township managers do a little different things in different communities. So
Okay.
like for me, I also run a municipal authority, our sewer authority. I'm also managing the planning process of all this land development stuff. Whereas a bigger municipality might have a planning and zoning director who
Right.
has an entire department who does that. Like I do that. Like I'm also the HR director. So it's if they lose me, they got to fill four positions. Where in a bigger municipality, if they lose an HR person, they replace it with an HR person.
Right.
And so like, and you're like when I'm talking to this board, I'm like, every person at New Hanover Township matters. Like we don't have fat here. We don't have like an extra employee just to stand around. So like every time we have to replace an employee, we're triaging everything else, and the quality of everything else is going down.
Right.
So I think that Joe, that resonated probably the most with them
Okay.
because they're all very practical and they're reasonable enough to go, all right, if we have residents come in and we have to delay them for 2 weeks because we're onboarding an employee, that doesn't really help anybody.
Right. Right.
And so, like, what's the value of that employee, like, or that resident, excuse me, if they're upset because they can't get a permit on Friday and they got to wait till Monday, or they got to adapt and go to Thursday? Like, so you start to getting these value propositions.
Right.
So, so, and then to answer the other part of your question, like, I think the applicability of this policy is way easier in bigger municipalities because they can stay open 5 days a week, but still have a 4-day, 36-hour work week, and just either choose to have two schedules, one Monday through Thursday, and the second Tuesday through Friday, although I'd recommend a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday schedule. Um, but again, like that would be infinitely easier. Like I think at a smaller municipality like ours, you got to nail it the first time. And that was a big topic, just so you know. Like the board's like, well, can we have two shifts? And I'm like,
Not in our size, right?
no, no,
Yeah.
because like I have one admin assistant.
Right.
Like, so if she's not here, who's doing that work?
Right.
Um, so we couldn't. And you know what, too, a large part of this movement, because like like the nexus for it at the same time was the sewer side. So in Pennsylvania, and I don't know if you see it elsewhere, but in Pennsylvania, there was a law change a few years ago where the privatization of water and sewer allowed, that to be a little more easily obtained. So all around us, municipalities are selling their water and or sewer authorities, making, a boatload of money. And in here, it's like there's an expectation that we do it better than private. So I have now our water or sewer, private companies plucking our talent and giving them more money. And so think about it. If you only work Monday through Thursday here, now those people are still on call Friday, Saturday, Sunday in case
Sure.
something happens to our sewer plant.
Of course. Yeah.
The private sector is never going to be able to compete with taking my employee away because they're for all intent and purposes making widgets, whereas
Right.
we are not making widgets. And that's the difference of public versus private. Is like our stuff can mostly wait until Monday, whereas if you close your restaurant on Friday, you're not bringing in revenue. And that's kind of thing I was telling the board. I'm like, it's going to be hard for the private sector to pull our employees, but my hedge of my bet was the fact that municipalities are slow to change, that we're going to be a trailblazer, even though like we might not want to be, but other municipalities are going to be so slow to act. Our brand is going to be, we're going to be the brand that people go to, and we won the arms race, if you will.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So, real quick, real brief, it gets passed by the governing body. Obviously, is it a unanimous vote at the end of the day, or did you have that one lone holdout?
So it was 3-2. It was 3-2 for a trial period.
Okay.
So the way it was able to be implemented, the board's like, we'll settle on a 9-month trial period. So let's say it's November of 2021. They're like, we will start it January 1st, 2022. It's a 9-month trial period.
Okay.
And then even though one of the supervisors was a no vote, the supervisor was like, can we get a public feedback form? Because in the data that I want you to acquire is I want to keep the vestibule open 24/7. We have the technology to lock it. Is put that form out there. So when people come and they're used to coming on a Friday,
And there's no one home. There's no one
there's
there,
no one
right?
home, hopefully they'll fill out the form, put it in the box, and then let's see who's actually coming. Now, this is fascinating because in New Hanover, our and look, there are things that probably led to the success of this. Is when we got here, we would do our sewer payments in-house. We've outsourced that before I had this concept present. Before that, we would have a lot of walk-ins,
Okay.
but I've outsourced that. We've outsourced our building inspection process, so our building inspection process can still happen on a Friday. So that was a key thing too. But like we've outsourced where it made sense to outsource, where people their touch points would still be met. But oh man, I'm blanking on my topic.
That's good. You're talking about the feedback that you got from
Yeah,
in the vestibules.
yeah. So like we have this feedback form, and people are doing it. But our walk-in, I remember my point. The walk-in, we average about 8 walk-ins a day. That's low. So like you might have bigger municipalities that have 30 walk-ins a day, but it's maybe they can outsource or what have you. But like here with the pandemic, with the low volume of walk-ins, so like I always call this a chill community. Like in my last community, when a snowflake would hit, a resident would call and complain that we're not out there plowing.
Right,
In
right.
Hanover, I'm not getting those phone calls, Joe. And you know what? I plowed myself, and I've seen residents plow with us. So it's like it's just the different. Like it matters the number.
Every city has a
That's
different every city has a different culture and personality, right? Every
there
city's
you
just
go.
different. Yeah, yeah.
So we're laid back enough. We're like that kind of helped out a lot. So the board 3-2 vote, 9-month trial period, and that was after 2 public meetings where the public was like, how about we do Tuesday through Friday or do this or that? But I'll tell you this. I had enough people that were like, you know what, Jamie's been successful enough here. Let's at least give him a
Give him a
chance.
shot, right?
And then
He's earned the right to fail on an idea, right? So to speak, if I may be so
y-
bold. I mean,
yeah, no, and then you always get that one, or we'll fire him. Like,
yeah,
and I said, look, I go, I'll put my reputation on the line that it's gonna work, because you know what? Look, tongue in cheek, when people get used to a 4-day, 36-hour work week, they're gonna make it work.
well, that kind of leads into my next deal, right? Because you go to this trial period, right? So I'm
Yeah.
assuming that at this point, most of the employees, if not all of them, are like, hey, let's do this, let's make it work, right? And so
Yep.
they have this very powerful carrot, this very powerful incentive to make
Hmm.
it work, right? Because obviously if it doesn't go well, then you know it's going to get pulled, right? It's a trial period. It's
Hmm.
going to get yanked, right? Can you speak a little bit to what kind of chatter or the team sort of work mentality, or how did the staff approach this whole thing? I mean, I don't want to go
No,
kumbaya or
I
whatever.
got you. No, I
Did it turn into like, hey, we're all in this and we got to get this thing together because we really want to keep it, or was it not that overt?
well, when you go back, like knowing that the employees already had the buy-in, that was very helpful. Like if you have a director that's like, I don't want to do this, you got to keep an eye on that, right? Well, we had a lot of our whole month of December before was educating the community through like our newsletter, websites, anywhere we can post to tell people, let them know. We had sewer billing, so we went quarterly sewer billing. We'd put notice, hey, our new hours, etc. Everybody's emails we put in their signature line, like, hey, just so you know our hours. Anybody we can hit there, but also when January 1st hit, I try to set the expectation that like, look, if it's not working in month one, it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It means we're still transitioning. And this is seasonal. So the one supervisor who was like, I want to see at least 9 months because it's at least 3 seasons and includes winter.
Right.
And so the we implement this, and we did the PTO change, and like the board also, just so you know, the board wanted everybody to sign off that it was a trial period, that the board has the right, that if we go back, like their salaries aren't going to change, but at the end of the day, everybody signed off, we're good, we're ready to go. We do it, and the first month happens, and it's fine. There's no problems. And I'll tell you, we had a lot of snowstorms. So like the one supervisor who was like, I'm a no dog, right?
Yeah.
He's like in February, he's like, where's the data? And I'm like, I go, I need more. Like it's been like 28 days.
Yeah.
I go, I can give you a call volume and stuff like that. I go, but like let's just give ourselves like a couple months. So then in my manager report, I would be like, here's the number of calls, here's this. And as time went down, the questions went down, right? Because everyone was really interested in month one. Would it fail? It worked. Everybody in month two, it worked. The work quality on my public works sewer changed zero. And like a fair question would be, well, Jamie, how do you know that? One, am I getting any call volume differences in the public? No. Two, are the objectives that we set out, which are similar on a year-to-year basis, getting met? Yes. But what else did I notice? And here's things I didn't think about, is when people leave Thursday at 3:30 or 5, but let's just stick to public works and sewer where it's more physical manual labor, and they come back Monday, they've now had an extra day of physical body rest.
Right.
So now people are coming back looser, more like mentally acute. They're there, happier. Like, and rah rah, right? Happier, but I mean, like, people aren't complaining about their lives as much. It's weird. It's like a phenomenon, if you want to call it that.
Well,
But
it's a legitimate
I see
quality
that.
of life. What's a legitimate quality of life enhancement, right? I mean, that's really what you're talking about.
Well, and what's funky is like the other thing, and I didn't mention earlier, is like when people are like, "Well, what am I going to do with my Friday off?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like,
Fig-
why don't you see
Figure it
what you
out.
do? Why don't you see? And then so like I think at the 3 month mark was the key mark for me. After 3 months, I'm asking people, "What do you do?" And they're like, I mean, this is like at the end of March. They're like, "Oh, like I moved all my appointments to Friday. Oh, I go grocery shopping. Oh, I play video games again."
Yeah.
Like it's just nice. Like, like I feel like I'm more focused on Saturdays and Sundays with my family. Like I don't feel stressed out on Sunday that I didn't get everything accomplished.
Right.
I,
Right.
I when you talk about managerial wins and keeping your employees happy, that's like the moment I was like, I think we're onto something here.
Well,
I think we're onto something.
so you go through this 9-month trial period. You don't get really any blowback from the public. Was there any vestibule, any comments from the walk-ins, anything like that? That was
One, one,
one.
one in
What
9 months.
critical?
One. No, just like, hey, call me back.
So you literally had one person turn in a file.
One. And
And it was
too, like I had one person email me, and then I kept going back and forth. But we also here we have like voice over IP, so our phones, like I don't know if every person does it at the township, but like I do it where like if somebody calls my phone, it goes, the voicemail comes to my email. Joe, I don't know any manager who turns off Friday and comes back Monday. If I see something that needs it, I'll go take care of it. Or I have people here. Again, it's how do you build your culture? If
Right.
if I've had a successfully defined culture, if our mission is we take care of residents, to me, my expectation is I don't care if it's Saturday, Sunday, 8 o'clock at night. We help people if they are in need.
So
And I think that has kind of made it successful.
so you go 9 months into this trial run, right?
Yeah.
And then what happens? You go to the board, and it's walk me through that.
So I go to that board meeting in September, and that was just a discussion because I think they voted on for either October or November. Um, the now here's what's interesting. So in the January that the trial period was implemented, the one supervisor is no longer on the board, and he was one of the three yes votes.
Ooh,
So now I got a new supervisor.
who's a
So
wild
I'm
card?
like, I have a wild card. He was a yes though, which was really nice, and he was like, "This is a great idea. Teachers should do this." And I go, "Yes, yes." So we get to the meeting, and I'm expecting like like the public to chime in and what have you. And I gotta admit, like I don't sweat a lot at after being 7 years of doing this. I was sweating that night
Because
because
you knew that if it got yanked, there was going to be some devastation with the morale with the employees at that point, right? Like, is that one of the big
oh,
risks of doing
definitely,
this? I mean,
definitely.
that's
Like I mean, they knew it was a possibility. And like it's not like I mean we don't hide things like we talk about this like it's a real
yeah.
possibility
They
because
signed
again
up. They signed the form. I mean, we know.
but
Yeah,
like but you also have to respect the governing body. So like my role as a manager is not to set false expectations,
right.
and it's not to be oh it's the board's decision. It's like no I'm here, it's my fault at the end of the day if it didn't work. So um what was really interesting is as I go into that meeting and we're talking about it, I have the same supervisor. He goes, "It's still a no from me, dog." And I'm like, come on, it works. But what was interesting is the public. So I feel like we have a really interesting public because we've built a level of transparency where we explain everything. Like we're goofy. Like we even talk about like we won't do settlement agreements in New Hanover unless we walk through it with the public because we want them to know like hey it's a community decision. So we've established that culture of transparency, and we had people in the public who were against the concept for the trial period speak out and go, you know what, if that helps us get talent and we had no problems, let's keep doing it.
But that's
And
based
like
off. That's a function of them not being feeling negatively impacted by it, right? Because
exactly.
at the end of the day, the discussion was we got to provide results and service to our residents, right? We got to make them
Yeah.
happy. So if they're happy after this trial period, then what's the reason for resisting, right? At that point,
Well, yeah, because like you'll get people that go, well, how do I know it's better? And I'm like, you won't know until you do a trial period, right? And if it's even 1% better, it's better,
right?
right? We like sometimes we get fixated on policies and we go, it has to be 100% better, but I'm like, no, we don't. Is it better? Does it help people? Like everything's gonna need to be changed at some point. So like just jump in, do a trial period if anything, and pull it back. So we did that, but I was sweating because I had some key retirements coming up. And I knew the people that I wanted in the roles to fill those roles. And I knew that there was probably no chance
On a
unless I kept
traditional,
this
okay, yeah.
unless I kept like look, like I have an excellent assistant manager that I fully expect will be a township manager whenever she chooses. But she's traveling 45 minutes a day. There's no way. There's no way she drives here 5 days a week. So like for me, I was like almost like the entire vision of like trying to evolve to a gold standard rode on
Hinge,
this.
yeah, hinged on
It
it.
hinged
Yep.
on this. Board was like the main thing before the official vote in like I say November was like, all right, well, do we want to do this for another year? I was sweating that, Joe, because I'm like, oh, like it's hard because then when you're hiring people, how do I represent this, that it's a
Right.
possibility that I can pull the rug from underneath you.
Yep.
And we went into this the board meeting where it was voted on, and I think it was voted on 4-1 actually, and to affirm it. But it ended up getting affirmed where it was like, look, we would be okay as long as you put in the employee handbook that we have the right at any moment um, to change back if we feel like the services are not being met by the residents. And I told bro, I go, if you can meet me halfway, if you do that, then do it for January 1st, because it gives people a chance to kind of think if they want to stay or go, right?
Right.
And it works. So like, but not having to do it every year was a big win, because I don't like when people feel like an uncertainty in their
Of
life,
course. Of course. Yeah. It's
you know?
anxiety. Yeah. 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 Absolutely.
So I mean, look, we're 18 months in. Nobody talks about it anymore. It's exactly the same. And I'll tell you this, I actually think employees work better. What I've seen is when you had a 5-day, 40-hour work week, and you've had a lot of employees, like they might take a Tuesday off, right? Or Thursday, a random day. I'm sick here. Like, I don't see that as much. I see people taking off a full week. So what I'm seeing is my limited public works team is I'm having fuller teams more often. I
Right.
can track that. I can track that through the day. I can find that data. Which when I have fuller teams, then I'm getting a more efficient product. That not working Friday, when people are like, well, it's 4 hours, and is that fair to the public? I go, look, when you start a day, does anyone start like if I start here at 8, there's no one that goes, I'm ready to work at 8 o'clock typing. You
Right.
come
Strapped in.
in,
Right.
you
Yeah.
get your coffee, you say your hellos. Public works feel right. They're coming in, they're saying hello, they're getting their coffee, they're checking the news, they're getting the vehicle started. Let's say that's a half an hour.
Yeah.
When it's a half an hour to go, you think people wait till 1 minute before and drive back? No, a half an hour before the drive back, you already lose an hour every day.
Yep. Yep.
Then you got your 30 minutes, or your 15-minute breaks or what have you. So let's say, to be fair, you lose 2 hours every Friday anyway. So now you're looking at a 38 versus 36 anyway. You're 2 hours.
Yeah.
So for 2 hours, now you get to Monday through Thursday. If you're paving, you're already in the middle of paving. Now you have an extra hour of productivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
like for
and
two
there's
hours, is it,
And there's a
like,
there's a lot of public works departments across the country that have shifted to that 410 because of that, exactly what you talk about with that
yeah,
windshield time, right? Especially a lot of the county governments where they have a lot of
yeah.
driving out in the far places, so they'll go to that 410 because that eliminates one extra day of doing all those checks, right?
Hmm.
Checking your vehicle, the whole process, the drive, so it's the setup and the breakdown of the job site, all that stuff. So yeah,
Well, and if you and here's where, like, if you get 4-day 32-hour work week, because I had a board member, well, what's next? 4-day 32-hour work week? I can say no. I'm never going to recommend it, because that takes the logic away what I just told you.
right,
Is if you do 4 8-hour days, now you're actually losing productivity.
right,
At
interesting.
least in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah,
So like, to be fair to the resident, I'm like, look, if you're losing 2 hours of productivity in your mind, what's greater? That, or the fact that I have talent who is going to, through osmosis or through culture building, stay longer, which reduces legal costs, opportunity costs to do other things, might have better ideas that save us money on road work or what have you, and then that synergy that just comes through that with continuity.
right.
In New Hanover, they made a decision that that mattered more.
And
So,
and here's the thing too, right? If you're attracting higher quality employees, it's you can't even put a dollar value on the benefit to the organization, the added value
mhm,
that those individuals bring versus hiring somebody who's more mediocre, but maybe is working there for longer, more hours. Because we all know that that mediocre employee, even if they're theoretically working longer hours under the traditional format, they're not producing the same
mhm.
value or work product benefit that an exceptional employee would have. So it's a very interesting process you've been working on. So this happened in January. You went to the permanent 36-hour work week schedule, right? So now
Yep.
you're basically almost 8 months into it now. What has been the feedback or the chatter within your state, your community, your peers, or what's going on in that front?
So we had, when the board wanted to see before they voted, just so you know, on feedback from the employees.
Okay.
And like every employee, and we did like I think like a 10 questionnaire, like what do you do with your time, etc. like that. I think the board was moved by how people's lives have changed, at least in their perspective, in a positive way.
Okay.
But look, what's funny is remember I told you earlier about like the one guy who's like, it won't work. I did 4 10s and we're like, what's 4 9s? Like, it still won't work.
Yeah.
He's the only one who did like it was anonymous, but you could just tell by his tone it was him. And he's like this, NA, don't like NA, and I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It is what it is. But like, so for the last 8 months, I kid you not, like, I don't think outside of me doing a presentation on it and with you, no one's talked about it.
So
So
no
now,
one's.
like,
So that goes back to what
no,
you said a minute ago about governments being slow to make change, right? You're the trailblazer now, right?
it just became the new normal. And so now the new normal is what have we achieved since then? So I believe we hired better talent. That better talent is going to find some efficiencies that we haven't. I mean, we have, and that talent's also helping me because then I can focus on other things. But having that better talent is going to help this community long term because, like, let's say I leave, they now don't have to worry about filling in all those other roles that they may have had to worry about before that 4-day work week went in. So it just hedges their bet. I always joke when I talk to people, I say we always complain about the wars we fought because we know how much we wasted, right? Or what have you. We never talk about the wars we avoided and the money we saved because it's not in front of us. So like now we've gotten to a point where like we don't talk about this 4-day, 36-hour work week because it's working. And people they don't notice the difference. And you know what? If I ask a resident, hey, do you know we're on a 4-day, 36-hour work week? They'd probably go, no,
Yeah.
but they're not seeing any changes in their service. But we have now people that are able to answer their questions differently or more thoroughly. They don't have to rely on me to answer every question. So it's a win. And like as that culture builds up, I mean, I have an opening right now. I'm seeing really good talent for it. And so it's and then I ask questions like, is it because of the 4-day work week? And yeah, like who wouldn't want Fridays off?
So here's the thing, though, and I will say, being devil's advocate, right? I'd say, Jamie, you got a small organization. You're talking about 15 to 18 employees that are on this new work schedule, what have you. It's only really been in place permanently for 8 months. Do you have any hardcore data or sense that you actually have reduced turnover, that you have got increase in production, or is this all just the eye test, be in sort of anecdotal? Like, how would you respond to the devil's advocate? Say, show me the proof. Like, I mean, you're just telling me that you're getting everything
Yeah.
done. Like, what's because you're gonna have some ultimate skeptics out there who be like, I don't believe it. I'm not willing to do that. Right. So
Look, there's no doubt. I think at like when I referenced before, I'm seeing fuller teams. I can go to data and go, here's the days taken off last year, here's the days taken off this year. The variability of that is like I can't, you can't count for the health of that person or what happened in
sure.
that. So I can go out to a site and if we're achieving the same things, let's say in public works that we were 2 years ago, but we're doing it in 36 hours. I'm not going to be able to say I have all this rigorous data because if I had a bigger municipality, I'd have a data analyst, right?
Right. Right.
But I'm looking at it, I'm like, how are they getting the same things done? I mean, public works do the same thing everywhere, every season.
Right.
How are they doing the same things? I'm not, getting complaints from people. I'm getting the same amount of complaints and we're taking care of it. That would be the data I'd point to. Is it strong? No.
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm
Right.
only 8 months in. I haven't hired a lot of people for it, but I'll tell you this, I know that the people I've hired are here because of that 4-day work week.
100%.
Um,
100%'s been a driving factor.
it I don't think I can claim it's been the only driving factor. I'd like to say that they like the manager they work for, right?
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
but I think yeah, no, look, when you start looking at this place is going to pay me 60,000 and this place is going to pay me 70,000, but this place at 60,000 is 4-day work week. When I get that data, I could share it with you, but like I'm looking at the quality of applications. I can't run it again having a 5-day work week to see if they wouldn't apply, but
Right.
at the end of the day, I'm happy about it. So I think over time, I look at it from this point of view. It feels the same with this schedule that it did the other schedule, but I have happier employees that are telling me they're benefiting from having that day off, and I'm seeing it anecdotally in the field and can measure small months of data. And like I talk, does it have to be 100% better? No. I know it's at least 1% better.
Well, Jamie, you've kind of put yourself out, at least to me. I don't think I'm misstating, but you're kind of like an ambassador. I think you're pretty passionate about this whole 36-hour work week and alternative schedules and so forth and so on, right? That's fair to say. You talked to your state association and whatnot. I assume that you're more than willing to receive calls and inquiries from other
Oh,
city
definitely.
managers who want to talk about it,
Yep.
right? And because, okay, absolutely. So there you guys have it. Jamie Gwynn, new Hanover Township manager. He is the I'm gonna call you a trailblazer. You're a trailblazer on the. I don't know of anybody else doing a 36-hour work week schedule. I literally do not. Maybe someone will hear this podcast and say "ah contraire," and we've been doing it ourselves. But I would love to hear that. I don't know, but to my knowledge, you're the only one doing the third. Well, you have a second municipality or whatever in Pennsylvania who's adopted what you guys are doing. But I think you legitimately are a trendsetter, a trailblazer on this, Jamie. And it's been fantastic having you on the podcast. Thank you so much. And I don't know if you have any other parting comments or thoughts, but I appreciate you being on the show.
No, I'll just tell you when the other municipality recently converted to the 4-day, 36-hour work week. I asked the manager, I go, it's hard, isn't it? He goes, yeah, it was hard. And I go, so what are you gonna do at your Fridays? He goes, I'm going fishing. Yeah, I'm going fishing.
Well, there you go. Someone figured out what to do with their extra Friday, right?
There you go.
All
But
right.
no, thank you for having me.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jamie. I am Joe Turner, and this is the City Manager Unfiltered podcast, a podcast by a city manager for city managers and other public sector executives. And until next time, see you later.